It's so fucking good. It's so good. She's playing us. We know she's playing us, and we are falling for it. I am on my feet, even knowing that it's an act. Brava. A triumph.
Yeah.
Look right into your podcast app. You'll see there's a discourse happening. Is this book a masterpiece or problematic? One's a lifelong diehard fan, the other's a first-time reader. Both are really smart and funny and attractive. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. Titans and hierarchy. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. With madness focus on their bodies. Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. What do they mean by all American? Sweet Valley, Sweet Valley High. No sex, just titillation.
Hello and welcome.
Hi there, and hello to you.
How are you doing?
Better now.
Okay.
Very
Just to
happy
get
to
it,
see your face.
I'm very happy to see your face. Just to get it right out in the open, this book bangs.
Yay! I've
And
been excited about this one.
that surprises me, Pardo, because you know what? The trouble with you,
What?
Becky, is that you just don't understand elegance. Yeah, I mean, this was like Jessica at her absolute best.
It's so embarrassing when people don't understand elegance. Go off.
I almost texted you last night, like, clear your schedule. There's no way this is a 2 hour. This is this is an extended Snyder cut situation. Like, this book is so fucking good. It's just it's everything you want. It's nothing you don't.
What were you expecting?
So eagle-eyed listeners from last episode will know that you asked my predictions, and I said she is definitely doing something drastic with her hair. She's going to dye her hair brown. Spoiler alert, listeners. Oh, she dyes her hair, and she looks spectacular.
And I don't want to stop you, but I'm just going to explain that she refers to Jessica. The title of the book is The New Jessica, Sweet Valley High, number 32. Please go on.
I thought it was like an enjoyable romp, a lovely kind of Tyra ANTM makeover moment. And then, like some episodes of ANTM, it like got into the interiority. It got into like, remember when they tried to give Cassie from ANTM that like Mia Farrow and Rosemary's Baby haircut, and she was like, I can't, my hair is so important to me, my hair is who I am. Like, this book is doing that, and it is so brilliant.
Not to whatever, but if you're going to bring up Cassie, we'd be remiss to not mention the other famous icon, legend, moment, whose hair, the cutting off of it, posed a drastic threat to their identity and sort of value prop, as it were, who I had been sending you content about recently. Okay, a hottie called Samson from Samson and Delilah. And the other day I was sending Robert videos from, there used to be this, I need to talk about this, sorry, please. This isn't my fault, you brought it up. So really quick,
I did explicitly say, hey, Pardo, will you talk to me about that Samson and Delilah cartoon? I did say that, so that's on me.
in Jewish Bible times, there's a guy called Samson. There were these videos in the 80s on VHS, Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and it was like these kids are doing an archaeological dig, and then they fall into a hole, and they're back in some biblical tale that gets told through them hanging out in that thing. So there's like one for Noah's Ark, and there's a flood, and you see all the animals going 2 by 2, and it's like lit. And there was one of Samson and Delilah, and Samson was this big, strong man. He had this really sexy girlfriend called, you guys did, Delilah. And all I remember about it is that like he was really strong and jacked. He was like Ken Matthews, but someone kidnapped him or something, literally put him in a dungeon and tied him to a thing. He's tied on a chain. He has to like push it. He has to like be strong and like push this thing in a circle. Like something you would have like a horse do. I don't know what it's called. And he had a collar on his neck. It was chained to this thing, was like just sort of pushing this thing of being like a servant for whoever kidnapped him. I don't even remember who that was. Anyhow, they cut off his hair, which was, I think, the reason why he wasn't able to like fight back or something, because like his hair was his strength. And then I don't remember what happened, but maybe he gets free and then hopefully he gets back together with Delilah.
Isn't the whole thing that Delilah cuts his hair in the night?
That sounds right. Say more.
I just love that, like, you're like, I was obsessed with this video. We watch it all of the time. I remember nothing of the plot, but he was chained up and sweaty and jacked. It was like pornography for you, mainly. And that's beautiful.
The promise, Samson. What was it?
My hair.
What about your hair?
That no razor would ever,
Yes? Yes, whatever what?
would ever cut it off.
If your hair was cut off, you'd lose your strength?
The point is, it's a little bit chicken and egg about, the identity and the hairdo, right? To get us back to what were we saying?
I mean, we were talking about how good this book is.
Obviously, it's so much fun, this book, because Jessica just acts the fool in all her funny ways, and it's like so funny. She wears all these outrageous clothes and like accents, and like it's amazing.
Would you say acts the fool? Or would you say acts like a continental model who is amazing and beautiful and classy?
She acts amazing. There's no words for it. It's a performance. She's extremely self-conscious about the fact that this is all performance. She literally says it the whole time. This is self-aware. And it's brilliant. Consummate entertainer. Thank God for her.
She gives you everything she's got.
I assumed you were positively just out of your mind with glee at the number of verbatim Elizabeth Diary entries. We've been sort of tracking the writing samples that we've received from her so far. We've had her writing in her diary. I don't know that we've had a
snapshot.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners, there's this whole B plot that like is incredibly stupid and we don't care about it.
To call it a B plot is the most generous thing you've ever done and said in your life.
I'm very generous. Nothing. It's the nothingest of nothings, but Elizabeth does spend a lot of time writing in her diary and then loses her diary and then finds her diary. And not even that nothing of a nothing could bring me down from this book. I was so high that I was like, sure, whatever, great. Here's another long, boring passage from Elizabeth's diary. Whatever. We just got to like get me back to my mama. She's my mama.
I mean, Elizabeth's diary is, it must be said, her real sort of boyfriend or girlfriend. I mean, it's the only one she communicates to. This book is also jokes because we're always talking about how Elizabeth like avoids any conversation about her actual feelings to anyone in her life. It's so wild that the way this book essentially gets resolved, the main conflict of this book gets resolved, is that Jessica reads Elizabeth's diary where she like divulges how she actually feels about what's going on. And then Jessica like is sensitive and then patches up their relationship and like makes an effort and like takes the dye out of her hair and like things go back to quote unquote normal. But like the whole book is about how like Elizabeth doesn't tell Jessica how she feels about that. She absolutely refuses to tell Jeffrey the issues she's having with him, and her way of addressing her relationship issues is to literally just like run down the street every time she sees him, like screaming that she left the oven on. Like that is how she addresses everything. And thank God for Jessica.
Yeah.
Just the fact that the supposed B plot of this story is like a lost diary. And a lost diary narrative is something that is theoretically so rich, so robust. Like you could imagine it's going to go all sorts of ways, right? Like the whole thing of a lost diary is like, oh, it could get into the wrong hands, or like it's going to reveal some big thing that like someone you wouldn't want to be revealed to. But it's literally just like, it circulates among like 3 different people. None of them look at it. Collins passes it to Penny. Penny passes it to Jess. It's like, okay, so that didn't go anywhere. So then the only thing that happens is Jess reads it and it's like, oh, Liz is really upset. Let me be nice. And help her fix her relationship with Jeffrey, by the way. She helps her solve that too. It would be great if one of these books Liz could learn a lesson about actually, having to speak to someone directly at some point in the book. It's like, why doesn't that ever happen? But so we have to have this stolen diary just for that. It's crazy.
It's nothing. I mean, it's often said that Liz is 4 minutes older, but seems like many years older. And I don't think that's true at all. Like in this book, I think Jessica is doing the adult behavior. Some of it is ridiculous and laughable, but she at least is like, I see how people feel and I'm going to interact with them. Like Alyssa's acting like a child.
100%. And this isn't the first time we've seen Jessica do this. Never forget, the only reason Liz was able to get together with Jeffrey in the first place was because Jessica confronted her in the sand, chased after her, and forced her to acknowledge, you like Jeffrey, can we stop doing this, please? Can you just fucking go like deal with this? Elizabeth still was like, what? Could it possibly? Of course, it's frustrating, and we're always seeing these ideological descriptions of the twins that are obscuring a lot of these things, like Jessica's maturity and so on. But we must also have compassion for Liz, because I think the mental situation and psychological situation she's in has sort of forced her to cope this way, and she's not supported. And like the people in her life haven't helped her address that this is an issue. Like she's basically enabled by everyone in her life too. And like her behavior gets reinforced by like no one's helping her grow. Jeffrey hopefully can, because Jeffrey is such a great contrast and intervention who actually forces her to be direct and acknowledge reality and says like, what are you doing? Like, why are you acting like this? Like, what is happening?
Yeah. So I'm a couple of minds about Jeffrey. They're all positive.
I know he said stupid girl. It was rude.
Yeah. I mean, there's some moments in there where I'm like, yeah, but you're also a 16-year-old boy. Let's be real. Is he too good for Liz? And is their relationship doomed because he is a real person and she is not?
One of those questions I can answer, one of them I can't. Is he too good for her? 100%.
And I would never ask you to answer the second question.
So and the second one would be to spoil. So again, you're trying to entrap. You really try to entrap me, and I'm a so good.
I'm a mistress of entrapment. I'm like Catherine Zeta-Jones.
But what does that tell us? That you actually want to be spoiled, that you're actually protesting so much, but actually your deepest desire, which is showing up in these manipulations and calculations with me, trying to get me to slip and spill my beans like so much of a Jenny Townsend, the cousin from one of the recent books. Okay, but you actually want to know. You want to know, ooh, who ends up dead and alive? Who ends up together and apart?
Wait, dead and alive?
I already told you there's deaths. Not a lot, but there's a few key deaths that you will not see coming.
I don't.
Period. That's not a spoiler. Me saying that in a series of like literally 200 books, me telling you there will be a couple of deaths, that's not a spoiler. Well, please.
You tell yourself what you have to. My second thing, is it slightly misogynistic that in the story, like in the world of the story, Liz is having all of these completely unbelievable, unrealistic explanations for what's going on, and Jeffrey is the voice of reason, and it just feels like a little bit, you might say ideological, I don't know what you might say, but it feels like it's reinforcing this idea like, oh, 16-year-old girls are just like stupid and they need a boy to be like, Liz, what you're saying is incredibly dumb. Is that something or no?
Well, I've never considered this, and my initial reaction, but I'm extremely conscious of my bias to support Jeffrey, and I want you to help keep me. I know I do want to help me keep me honest, but here's my initial reaction, but I'm willing to look at examples. I think we see a lot of other examples of female voices of reason. For example, like as we said, Jessica. Like Jessica was the voice of reason who helped her see reality last time. She, in this book, also, for example, asks Elizabeth straight up at one point, like, you seem really upset. Like she notices her reaction to her makeover or whatever. She says like, what's wrong? Something going on? Enid, I think, is also a voice of reason. So I don't think we're exclusively seeing male voice of reason, because I feel like Enid also sort of pointed her attention to like, well, do you have any actual evidence that like Jeffrey is like feeling this way or whatever, you know? So that would be my initial reaction. But if we feel that there was like textual evidence that goes the other way, I'm absolutely open to it.
Yeah, no, I think you present a compelling point that if we only focus on the dyad of Liz and Jeffrey, maybe, but there are other women's voices who are able to have a coherent read of the world around them. So thank you.
I will say, in terms of the twin themes and the identity themes, it is a build on a lot of conversations that We've partially addressed some of these things of how do the twins be the same and how do they be different? How do they feel about this and all this type of stuff? I think this book expands on that. And it did make me interested to just do a little bit of Google scholaring on research on identity and identical twins, just to see what's out there, what's the wisdom. And so I do have some secondary stuff that I can bring in for us at some point, a couple interesting pieces that made me think like the people writing this book really knew what's like basically all the stuff we see is like, this is what happens. Like, I'm not saying it necessarily goes this way, but you know.
So there's like a lot of research about like one twin trying to become a fashion model.
Well, actually, most of the research I found was about candy stripers, identical twin candy stripers.
Of course. Mm-hmm. I assume in that literature, 95.72% of the time, one of those twins, candy stripers, gets kidnapped. You see that very commonly in the literature?
Yeah, almost always.
Almost always. Do you want to give me a 6-word summary? Do you want me to give you a 6-word summary?
Yeah, let's do it. I don't have one yet. Do you?
I do. Hair colors change. Family is forever.
We again are such the twins because I literally considered hairstyle. I was going to do hairstyle changes, but twins are forever.
Yeah, perfect. Lovely. Yeah. I love that.
But no, but I
was
going to
do
it. No, I'm not doing it. Let me think.
Like so much with Jessica, you're changing so that we're not identical.
Period.
Ooh, speaking of that, we get no puberty or period talk at all in these books. Never mind. Okay.
Sorry. There is a Sweet Valley Twins book when they get their periods, and it's a whole thing because guess what happens? And the book's called Jessica's Secret, and the cover is her doing like this, and you could tell she's sad. And
did she get it first?
No,
she got it second.
See, these books are never what you expect. They're so fucking good. Here's what happens. Liz one day has gotten her period.
Beautiful.
Oh, Jess, you got it too, I guess, because we're twins. You must have gotten it this morning too, of course. We're twins. Our bodies are the same. Oh, yes, I surely did. And I have nothing to be hiding. Twins come downstairs. Morning, twins. Flipping the pancakes, says hot, sexy mom Alice. Morning, Mama. Guess what? I can please you because Jessica and I have both gotten our periods today. Wonderful, girls. Let us have a cake to celebrate you both getting your period on the same day. But guess what? Jessica harbors a deep, dark secret. Bitch didn't get her period.
Bitch better have my money. Bitch didn't get her period.
She thinks to herself, is there something wrong with me?
Oh.
Then she gets it. She thinks, oh, well, what's the big whoop? So
we're still on your 6 words, am I correct?
Yeah, let me think for 1 sec.
Of course.
Twinness, oppressive, but can exploit strategically to one's advantage. 9 words.
And I think even just strategically, I think we knew what you were going for there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So twinness is oppressive.
Jessica is so understandably, by the way, obviously triggered and disturbed when everyone keeps confusing her with Liz. And the fact that they're perceived interchangeably is bothersome to both of them, again, very understandably. Mm-hmm. And the ability to leverage people's inattention to their differences or like an ability to tell them apart helps them solve problems pretty much every other book. So
I love it.
Let's do cliffhanger now.
That's what I thought.
Okay, basically everyone is confusing Jess and Liz, and it's driving Jess up a wall. Jessica couldn't stand the thought of losing her own identity. There was no way she was going to let people think she was Elizabeth. This was getting absurd. She was just going to have to think of some way to make sure no one made that mistake again, even if it meant doing something unbelievably drastic. Jessica takes desperate action in Sweet Valley High number 32, the new Jessica. And then we have, I just got to say really quick, an ad for Sweet Valley Twins that says, tell your kid sister your sister's friends, and your friends' sisters. Now they can all read about Jessica and Elizabeth and Sweet Valley Twins, a brand new series written just for them. You love reading about the Wakefield twins and the whole gang at SBH. You love the real life thrills and tender romance on every page of an SBH book. Now there's something new and exciting. Francine Pascal's latest series, Sweet Valley Twins. Jessica and Elizabeth when they were just 12 years old, as all the Sweet Valley excitement begins.
I wish I'd been in the ad room and they were like, well, we should mention that they might have a kid sister. And wait, their kid sister would have friends? Wait a minute, but what about their friend's kid sister? We could get everybody, as long as we explicitly say, tell your kid sister's friends, and your friend's kid sisters, we've covered all our bases. We've got everybody.
They have on the whiteboard a kinship chart. Yeah, you know what? It reminds me of that. And she'll tell two friends, and she'll tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on.
When I first tried Fabergé Organic shampoo with pure wheat germ oil and honey, it was so good I told two friends about it, and they told two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on.
Okay, we can literally summarize the plot so quick. Jessica is disturbed. Everyone's confusing her with Liz. She has a makeover, turns her hair black, starts talking with an accent, and God knows what else. Decides to like get into modeling, and the guy's like, actually, we want a blonde. So she is like, I guess I have to wash out my hair and pretend to be Liz instead of just being like, oh, hi, now I'm Jess with my hair washed out. Like, I could do it today. This was 2-day dye from the grocery store that I put in like literally 2.5 weeks ago. It probably is gone already. So like, it's a lot of chemistry plot, switching, not switching. A wig gets pulled off Elizabeth's head. In the end, they make up. Liz thinks Jeffries likes Jessica's dark hair better than her nail blonde hair, runs around avoiding him, and then eventually they make up.
That's it. That is the book, ladies and gentlemen, and kid sisters, and kid sisters' friends, and friends' kid sisters.
Down. Okay, now let's do taglines and then cover.
Jessica tries something drastic.
That, but put a little bit of a, whose perspective do we really care about? Is this a book about Jess? You'd think it's called The New Jessica.
Can Elizabeth survive Jessica's dramatic transformation?
Literally. Elizabeth's twin has become a complete stranger.
Come on. No.
That's
Elizabeth's twin has become a complete stranger. In some ways, that's brilliant, and I kind of love it.
It's brilliant. It's shocking. It reminds one of when the book described Lynn Henry as like, who? It was like the whole book's about Lynn and how like no one knows her name. And then like when she's introduced, the book's like, so then this girl comes in, no one knows who it is. It's like, what? And so here, the book is about Jessica being only known as part of a twin and not having her own identity. And the book is describing her as Elizabeth's twin on the cover. It's so rude.
It's rude and rich. That's my favorite kind of rudeness.
Yes,
it's layered
exactly.
And textural. On the back, we've got a dramatic change, a drastic choice.
Time for a change, ...
Yeah, great.
Great.
I'm just happy it wasn't like a missing journal ... or something. They kept trying to sell us on that, and we'll talk a lot about that. They kept trying to sell us on it.
And one of the things that is challenging about these books is that a lot of plot things like fractionally repeat, and you're confused of which book is what. So then you start reading this, you're like, oh, this is the missing diary book. And then it's like, no, this isn't even close to being missing diary book. There's like 10 other books with a missing diary plot that are like more about a missing diary than this is, literally. So you have to then like erase that from your mind. That happens a lot. All right, you ready?
No, I'm not ready. But we're not, yeah. Life isn't about waiting till you're ready. Life is about getting ready as it happens. I thought she looked like Lucy Lawless before. She is doing Lucy Lawless cosplay. She looks like Xena Warrior Princess.
You thought Liz looked like her before.
Oh, well, I'm going to look on my Kindle so I can see it close up. Oh my goodness.
Describe while I unwrap my chupa chup.
I mean, you better be chupping because wowee. So we have Liz and Jess standing back to back. And Liz is wearing exactly what you'd expect. Wheat-colored pants, white blouse button down, tucked in, white belt. Her hair is kind of pulled back with, we can only assume, 2 white barrettes. And she has her hand
I.e. her the way it always is.
Yeah, she looks exactly like what you picture, except her hand is on her cheek. And she has a look of many things. Her eyes are on Jessica. Her mouth is open as if to say, oh my gosh. But she also looks kind of concerned and a little, it's not surprised. There's something else there. Meanwhile, the new Jessica is staring out at us, one HOH or hand on hip, the other hand holding some very fashionable black sunglasses. Her hair, it must be said, is black. She's wearing like a black blazer, a white dress, a silver chunky belt, orange chunky necklace, yellow chunky bracelet, earrings, and enough makeup to make your average drag queen say, oh, that's a bit much. She's wearing like one tone of blue eyeshadow, bright pink lip, heavy eyebrows, heavy lashes, smug look on her face, looking out at the camera, devil may care. Tyra Banks would call her, and I quote, a no-neck monster.
Yeah, for sure. Elizabeth doesn't have a neck either.
Yeah.
She's looking like she's posing for a photograph.
Yeah,
I
but
think.
poorly.
Yeah, also, like, she just has so many accessories, like beaded bracelets, necklace, belts, sunglasses, earrings. She again has a manicure, but this time her nails are pink. I think just the most glaring thing when you look at this, of course, is the black hair and the black eyebrows. It's just shocking. But I think also, like, when you look at this and you're so shocked at, like, oh God, that's Jessica, you kind of want to be like, okay, let me cover the eyebrows and be like, does the face actually look like Jess? Because it's also different from how, there's some differences from Jess's usual face. Like, I think the nose is different, the chin is different. Like, it's not actually exactly Jess, I think. So it also enhances the fact of it feeling different.
Mm-hmm.
Shall we?
So, of course, we have to look at the engine of the text. That first paragraph. The first paragraph is Liz writing in her journal. She loved writing in it, but she found it required her most serious attention, especially when she's writing about her new feelings for Jeffrey French. Liz opens with writing in her diary, and that kind of foregrounds how important the diary is going to be. And then it gets even more frustrating when the diary is nothing. I think one thing that's funny to me is Jess comes in and says, hey, will you do me a favor? I'm supposed to be making dinner, but I need to go to Lila's house to look at the clothes her father brought back from her from Paris. And Liz's response is, I'm really busy, Jess, which is truly, to me, a wild thing to say. I'm really busy, Jess, writing in my diary, something I could do literally at any time.
But Jess could also go to Lila's. It's not like Jessica has a real thing to do. Jessica
no, I agree.
Anytime.
But that I think is an appropriate response. Like, to be like, wait a minute, you could just go to Lila's tomorrow, make dinner yourself. But the fact that she is so precious and so focused on her own writing and thinks like, I'm writing in my diary is a reason why I'm quote unquote so busy was just kind of interesting to me.
Okay, I have a slightly different read on it. Not so much precious. I guess I see it more as like, I think what this shows us is that the diary's the one who gets access to her feeling. Part of what we can interpret, I think, from her being like, I'm really busy, it's more like she doesn't tell Jessica the truth, which is she's processing a lot of feelings and really thinking right now about Jeffrey. Like, we would think that would be something she'd be excited to share with Jess, or maybe they like have a fun moment on the bed that morning of indulging and thinking about how Elizabeth's feeling about it all. And I'm excited, but I'm scared, but I'm whatever. And like, instead, it's the diary that gets that. And Jessica is seen as a taking away from her authentic expression. It's an interruption of her like authentic engagement with her feelings. So it sort of drives the engine in that way, I think. I did also think it's interesting to consider this sort of parallel structure to the previous book, started with Jessica in the sunlight on the lawn and her reverie being interrupted by Liz blocking her son. And we talked about who's blocking who in this book. And is it actually, the case that maybe Jessica would have or could have been attracted to Jeffrey? Right? And so in this book, we get Liz being interrupted by Jess, and again, there is a question of, is there anything going on between Jess and Jeffrey, just chemistry wise? It's highlighted that there's some experience conflict going on between the two of them around Jeffrey, I think.
Definitely. The other thing that I really, really, really love is while Liz is saying, no, I'm not going to make dinner for you, Jessica's like, oh, I love the dress that Grandma Wakefield sent you. Can I borrow it? And then Liz finally is like, yeah, fine, you can have the dress, but I refuse to make dinner tonight, Jess. You'll just have to tell Lila you'll see her later. And then we get the narrator saying, actually, Jessica had never expected to convince her sister to make dinner. She was more than happy to put off seeing Lila until the next day. It was one of Jessica's tried and true tactics. Make someone feel guilty about saying no about one thing when what she really wanted was the second thing she'd asked for.
I used to do that with my mom. When I got my nose pierced, I told her I wanted my eyebrow pierced. And I spent all this time arguing with her and trying to get her to get my eyebrow pierced. And I basically wore her out. And then I was like, okay, fine. What if I just get a nose pierced? She was like, okay. But I never wanted eyebrow.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
You're brilliant.
Maybe I learned that from here.
You definitely did learn that from here. Wait, do you ever do this to me? Are you ever because you're so demanding with me? Are some of your demands fake and you're just trying to get me something somewhere else?
No, look, if you really think this, tell me an example. I'll be honest, but I don't.
I'm joking.
Fine. I have a couple of comments, please.
Always.
So Jessica wants to borrow the dress from Elizabeth. And Grandma Wakefield had sent it to them. And I think it's so interesting that Grandma Wakefield is the only one who's going against type. For them, the parents would probably buy Jessica a dress and get Elizabeth a history book or whatever. And yes, it's because Jessica maybe exaggerated her enthusiasm for history last time the grandparents were here. But still, the grandparents have known them for 16 years and, they know the sort of stereotypes. And it's interesting that Grandma chooses to sort of not traffic in those. Also interesting that the book describes that oh, of course, Jessica wasn't really interested in history, but we also must remember that in the previous book, Jessica was actually helping Lila with her history work. So maybe Jessica is actually a little bit interested in history. Maybe Grandma Wakefield actually saw something real. The other thing I just observed is that a couple pages in, Jessica's looking in the mirror and says, I look fat. And that reminded me of book 1 started with Jessica looking in the mirror and saying she looked fat. And what was book 1 about? Jessica and Liz fighting over Todd. So I think having that parallel at the beginning here also is telling us there's a conflict between Jess and Liz about Jeffrey, even though they never say it's there. Okay. I mean, should we go to Liz's diary entry?
Do we have to?
It's basically her saying she's excited about Jeffrey and also nervous. The only thing notable for me, she says she feels so much more herself with him. And so one of the things I think about Jeffrey is I do think she feels seen by him. And the fact that she says she feels herself, who she really is, her real identity, right? And also when Jeffrey was first getting to know her, he was like, oh, you're different from your sister. You guys are really different. He seemed to get her right away and understand what she was like. And she actually was sort of surprised by that. That should be a signal to her that he likes Elizabeth. So the idea that just because Jessica dyes her hair, she thinks suddenly he likes Jess, it's even more against the evidence she has available to her.
And Elizabeth has some real strong intuition. And here it feels like she's so wrapped up in what she calls the turmoil of falling in love. This idea, so much was at stake when you made yourself vulnerable to a boy who was still in many ways a stranger. She feels like she's more herself with him. And yet some of the kind of core facets of who she is to us get a little bit lost in the turmoil and the shuffle of love.
Then we must consider that there is actually if then we think, well, Elizabeth's thing is usually coherent, or if she intuits something, it might actually be there. Then we could actually say, well, she maybe is intuiting actually some real chemistry between them because that actually is there.
I wonder.
So
we get all of these reasons for why Jessica needs to be differentiated. Ned says, how are my favorite carbon copies? He then refers to her as twin number 2.
It's not even just that they're referring to her this way. It's that, and I never throw this word around, but I actually see it almost gaslighting because she's specifically saying, please don't do that. And then they just keep doing it, acting like they're not doing anything and they know it. First he says carbon copies. even though we had a whole book Runaway, and like for many books, she's been telling everyone she doesn't like it when they call her that. She told Stephen, like she's told them repeatedly, and that like they should listen to her when she expresses upset. And then she says, I can't stand it. Please don't. She asks him twice. He says, oh, twin number 2. And then Liz is like, ditto. And she says, I don't want to go through life like this. We are separate people with different personalities. This isn't a joke. They keep doing it. And then they just like refuse to hear her.
I think you're right. You're like reticence to, I mean, this isn't gaslighting. So I think you were right when you're like, I don't like to use the word gaslighting. This is also not gaslighting, but it is bad parenting and it is shitty.
According to Chavez and Sorelio, 1983, the way parents behave toward their twins will dramatically impact their ability to create separate individual identities from the other while maintaining their own twin identity. Because twins are perceived by others as a unit, it is understandable that twins perceive their co-twin as a direct reflection of themselves, having what Klein 2003 called a narcissistic investment in each other. Because twins are frequently viewed as a common entity by others and even by themselves, twins often feel humiliated if their co-twin does something with which they disagree. This tendency means that twins believe they share a common identity with their co-twin in the eyes of others. This can be detrimental to their identity formation. And according to This Made Me Die, according to Weinstein, 1969, this research said they did a study on identical twins versus quote unquote singletons, which is what they call non-twins like you and me, on how long does it take them to learn to cognitively recognize their twin and themselves as separate from the reflection in a mirror. And it takes twins longer than non-twins to do that. So the fact that this book series starts off with, and we have so many examples, especially in the first few books, of interactions mediated by mirrors and the twins interacting through mirrors made me think, wow, that is really, really rich. Particularly, identical twins may struggle with identity development as a result of their parents treating them like a unit.
Okay, so all of that research just kind of says, yes, Ned is a shitty dad, but it seems like lots of parents of twins maybe are shitty. Okay.
One thing that I did think was interesting was that when Jessica's talking to her friends about why she's frustrated, she goes, at home, even our chores are identical. Like, I bet in your house, you take out the trash and your brother does the dishes or whatever. It's like, we just take turns on days of the week. We're doing the same stuff. And I found it so interesting that like having a specialization of labor would be meaningful to her as an identity differentiator, because like, it just would never occur to me that something like that would be, but given all of this, it actually makes a lot of sense what she's saying, you know?
She says, literally, we might as well be clones. And it's interesting when we think about kind of the role of clones and automatons and like her seeing the work we do in the house is important. And we are both robots programmed in the same way. I don't mind being a robot. I just want to be programmed in my own way. Like, I want to be the one who does the dishes. I want to be a little different, which is just funny because we see throughout all of the books that Jessica doesn't want to do any chores at all.
Well, number one, so we could consider that as a resistance to this now. But number two, what actually I think becomes really interesting is like, if we think about why is that in particular meaningful? It's because it occurs to me now that by having a specialization, you become indispensable. By her and Liz having equal skills, they both do the cooking, they both do this. If one of them runs away, that's kind of okay in terms of their household still from a sort of functionalist perspective will continue to operate. She doesn't have anything that they need in that sense to keep things running. So that is then, I think, symbolically actually like very important. That it's that and not something like, else. Like, she didn't say different hobbies or different like you know what I mean? They do have different hobbies, but that doesn't matter in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also like just obviously a damning critique of capitalism and late stage capitalism and the idea that like her identity is tied to the work she can perform at home.
I don't really agree, but I'm not really going to get into it. So we got to keep moving.
Well, you really don't agree? You basically never agree with what I say.
That's so not true. You say I don't agree with what you say.
You're right. Sorry. You win this round.
Okay, I'm going to say something and you may or may not be open to hearing it. One might consider that I spend a disproportionate amount of time with the text being our recorded conversations. And so I have an intimacy with the text that may equip me better sort of remembering all the data, being able to identify patterns of, oh, is Robert always the one being mean and I'm the one being nice, or I'm the mean one, or who's the one actually being the disagreeer and with the eyebrows? You know, I'm really, really kind of have a sort of deep familiarity with the subject at hand. Who's right and who's wrong?
Right. And what I love about you, what I love about you is that you don't bring in any biases at all. You're just kind of like an uninvolved observer who's just like, well, I'm an anthropologist here. I'm just kind of seeing what I see. And it turns out that, wow, Robert really is argumentative and wrong a lot of the time. That's really fascinating about them.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to point out a very, very common flaw in understanding of the sort of anthropological heuristics. So we never are trying to be objective. That would be very, very old-fashioned. Ever since the writing culture critiques of 1983, we are absolutely analyzing our positionality, our, relationship to the research, our relationship with informants and representation and power, and how might we be co-creators and collaborators with our informants rather than them being subjects, or even informants, how can we renegotiate the relationship, and so on and so forth, which brings us to... So everyone randomly is confusing them because Jess is wearing this fucking orange dress that Liz wore last week. Even though they walk different, they talk different, their hair's different, the way they interact, their physical demeanor is different. Like, it is cuckoo that everyone will be confusing them because she puts on a different outfit. It's so unrealistic.
Especially because we have many books documentation of Jess is very often wearing Liz's clothing and it works out fine.
Exactly.
A rare moment where you agree with me. This is fun. See, we're building together instead of ripping each other apart.
And if I may also build, according to Bacon 2006-2012, the way in which twins dress helps denote the way they perceive their identity. When they dress more similarly, they're more likely to be perceived as more similar. Their natural tendency to behave as individual might be subverted. But then listen to this. This is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, from a qualitative study called How Did I Become Me? Identical female twins describe the development of their individuality by Mata Pavironen, I can't pronounce the story, and Uziulati from Department of Education, something in Finland. We'll put it those excited.
Maybe.
Listen to this. So they're talking about how, like, during puberty, they start to want to differentiate their identities through clothing, okay? And that's a very common thing, which isn't surprising. It also happens in these books. Fine. So here's a quote. We agreed about it consciously, not based on what you liked. We just agreed that these are my clothes and you have your clothes. We wouldn't mix them because we want people to see us as separate persons. Even if we liked the same kinds of clothes, we didn't let each other use them because we had to show there was two of us. So there's over-indexing on the difference just for the sake of not confusing others, even if they like the same stuff, which is interesting.
That's interesting. There is the one thing I do like is that Lila walks the line of being what she pretends is a sympathetic ear, but is clearly an agitator. So skillfully. Jessica, dear, don't you realize that you and Elizabeth are identical twins? Why shouldn't people get you confused every once in a while? It's just like so good. She's pretending to be a good friend, but is really just fucking with her. And Jessica goes, how would you feel if people thought you were someone else? Wouldn't it bother you? Well, who else could I possibly be? I don't have a brother or a sister, let alone a twin. There is only one Lila Fowler, Jessica. I just like, it's so good. It's so perfectly kind of, I'm going to say what ostensibly could be kind of supportive, but really I am trying to F with you.
Just another reading on Lila, right? So you pointed out, she goes, who else could I possibly be? I don't even have a brother or sister, let alone a twin. There's only one Lila Fowler. So she's putting on this haughty thing, right? But we also must notice that what she's also pointing out is the potential loneliness, which is a big part of her whole story line, is that Lila is very rich and lonely. And by the way, not only does she not have a brother or sister, she does not have a mother. So just saying.
Regardless, I find Lila a fascinating figure in the text, especially this text, because in so many ways she is a facilitator for the creation of the new Jessica. Jessica dyes her hair at Lila's house. Lila helps her. Lila gives her all of the fabulous, fabulous French clothes that the new Jessica wears. And it just got me to thinking, like, Lila Fowler giving Jessica all of this amazing clothing, that's not super Lila to me. So what is Lila doing here? What is she enacting here? Why is she playing with Jessica like a doll? What is she hoping to accomplish? What is her ulterior motive?
Yeah, like the thing Jess and Liz have in common is their unbreakable twin bond.
Mm-hmm.
And like
They're UBT.
A big part of that, they're UBT, and a big part of that is looking identical. So, if Lila has to be a little uncharacteristically generous with the new clothes for Paris, I think it does raise a few eyebrows. Not something she would typically have such a generosity about.
These are like, not bespoke, but these are like, you can't get this at Lisette's. You know what I mean? Like, this is French finery. And she's like, here, take it. Like, there's something there, something rich, and I want to plumb the depths of it.
And that's the problem, is these texts are too rich, because now it's 4:00, and I could go on even about the French clothes still, and now I'm like, oh, it's resistance against her dad. I can't. Let's keep it moving.
Okay.
I mean, there's someone we have to talk about, and that someone is Katrina.
Katrina, you mean the essence of the new European beauty?
That's the one.
Talk to me about Katrina.
Well, throughout this book, we get a lot of what some sort of linguistic anthropologists may refer to as demeanor indexicals. Jessica is trying to project this new identity vis-a-vis an array of signs from all different modalities. So it's the way she speaks, including both effective accent as well as the content of her speech, dropping in, French words or dear and darling and a lot of this and that, or just speaking in whatever affected way. It also includes, obviously, her hair, her fashion, and her makeup. It also includes new ways of designing her body, and her body's going to be skinnier. It also includes the activities she does, going and hanging out in cafes, her supposed interests, different supposed high arts, ballet over cheerleading, all these multimodal ways of expressing that's supposed to indicate something about who you are and certain qualities that you might possess. Things like what she reads. Now she reads French magazines, things like what she's interested in, trying to be interested in politics and stuff. It's like, it really spans every aspect of life, to create this lifestyle brand.
Oh, I love the idea of thinking of it as a lifestyle brand, darling.
So one of her first inspirations for this is a model that I guess has had a feature about her in the latest issue of Vogue. Listen to what they say about her, Lila. Katrina is the essence of the new European beauty, the daughter of a ballerina and a film director. Not movie, film.
Mm-hmm.
Her hobbies include Indonesian cooking, French museums, and skiing in the Alps. That's going to be me, Lai. No more kid stuff. No more of the old Jessica Wakefield. And at some point, she decides she even should have a new name, and it's going to be Jessa Fields. But it's really interesting to think about what the specific signs are that she's picking up, okay? So she's a European beauty, so of course she's still white. But what does it mean? She's white with a little bit paler skin and dark hair. So Jessica is going to try to affect those changes, right? Then more white European signifiers with the Alps. Then Indonesian cooking. So Indonesian cooking is the sort of quote unquote exotic Asian thing that this model is probably interested in, because she probably spent time modeling in Indonesia, but now she comes back and lives in London or whatever. But it's like fascinating.
I have to agree, dear.
And then they dye the hair.
Mm-hmm.
And Lila's like, this stuff really works. Jessica's thinking, however bizarre I look, I'm not going to be just one of the Wakefield twins. Never again. Lila says it looks exotic. Then she lines Jessica's eyes with black coal, which we've seen, of course, before when Jessica had a Cleopatra costume.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we get another kind of reference to Silver Door, the salon that Jade Henry runs. But we're not talking about Jade Henry. We're talking about our first named potentially homosexual. I mean, Todd, I guess, is our first named homosexual. But we've got George, who is the man that does Lila's hair, who had done makeup in Hollywood for years.
You calling George the first named homosexual when he just referred to as a hairdresser is so funny.
I mean, he's also a makeup artist. Isn't that funny?
Hey, we got makeup artists before. Never forget the best makeup men in Hollywood from Malibu Summer.
Well, yeah, but that was more special effects work because they had to get him those glasses. So she's looking foreign, slightly Eastern, and incredibly sophisticated. We've got kind of a Taylor Swift, the old Jessica Wakefield was gone for good moment. Taylor can't come to the phone right now, etc.
She's wearing a purple jumpsuit and lizard boots.
Oh, lizard
Lila
boots.
gets her whole suitcase full of stuff. And then Jessica sort of tries on her new identity. She flips back her hair defiantly. Lila, darling, thank you so much for all your help. You've just been simply a dear.
I'll call you later. And then she kisses her once on each cheek. I love it. Jessica comes home. Of course, we've talked about interpolation enough that but Alice says that must be Jess. Liz, run and tell her to be quiet so she won't wake Daddy. Okay, whatever. Elizabeth nodded. She knew how much her father valued his Sunday afternoon naps. Fuck this guy. And then just to kind of a peek behind the curtains, I highlight in yellow for the most part. But the next line was to me so jarring that I highlighted it in orange. All thoughts of admonishing her twin fled when she saw the apparition that was coming through the front door.
I've said it before, I'll say it again. People have to show up at the door.
People love to show up at a door.
Mrs. Wakefield calls out girls, and I read in my secondary research that parents referring to twins always as twins or the girls, or hyphenating their names instead of saying Mary Kate Ashley or something instead of separate, which apparently happens a lot, is part of the issue. And so in terms of the interpolation and the coming to the hill, Mrs. Wakefield calls out girls and Jessica doesn't come in, right? And that makes Mrs. Wakefield come into the foyer and repeat herself, girls. So Elizabeth cries, you look like a stranger.
She wasn't exactly sure why, but she felt that Jessica had betrayed her. I wasn't expecting this kind of insightful, deep psychological plumbing into what this means. But we do get very early on, Elizabeth feels betrayed. She feels as if she lost her best friend, only worse, as if she had lost her twin sister and nothing in the world would bring her back again.
All right, then we get Jessica's about to show the classmates the new Jess, and she does her final looks to make sure everything's in place. Please tell us what she was wearing.
Well, I'll tell you what she's wearing. Can we also talk about what she's not wearing?
Lavalier.
She's not wearing that lavalier don't say of course, but now, of course, the lavalier had been removed. The new Jessica wouldn't be caught dead in something Elizabeth owned as well. So everything Jessica has on belonged to Lila. She was wearing an olive green leather skirt with a slit up the back. The skirt was so straight, it was hard to walk. Matching hose with a lacy pattern and 3-inch heels made Jessica's legs look longer and slimmer than usual. She felt very tall and elegant, and the silky, oversized blouse and green leather belt worn on her hips made her feel incredibly glamorous. Amazing.
And then everyone's like, who? What? Hello? Who are you, miss? And she's like, it's me, Jess. And Miss Dalton can't even keep order in the classroom because everyone is absolutely losing their shit. Kara is shrieking. Winston is jumping to his feet, executing a mock bow, announcing things to ladies and gentlemen, a transformation in our midst. Dalton is just sort of melting down. And Jessica had created a sensation too great to squelch. And Too Great to Squelch would have been a good title for this book. And everyone loves it, basically. I thought it was going to be everyone sort of makes fun of her of you're doing too much. But no, pretty much it's a hit and lands with everyone every time. And the parents are I guess just do what you want.
She's just perfectly calibrated. She knows exactly what to do to make people love her. It's like the Rock Around the Clock all over again. She knows her audience so well. Where did she get those clothes, Hairdo?
Just a little place on the left bank.
So good. And she's trying for the right expression midway between total boredom and faint generosity.
She removes a copy of Paris Match from her book bag as casually as possible. It's so important to keep up with world events, don't you think?
It definitely is. Now, at this time, Paris Match, their slogan, I don't know if you'll be interested in it. The weight of words, the shock of photos.
I didn't know that was a real magazine. Is it a tabloid?
It's more like Life. I mean, all I know is from Wikipedia, but it's like more like it's like the French version of like Life magazine. It's a weekly news magazine. It has some celebrity lifestyle features, but the weight of words, the shock of photos. What is this book about if not about the weight of words and Elizabeth's stupid fucking diary and the shock of the visual medium that is Jessa Fields?
Wonderful. And then Jessica knew she'd been a smashing success. Who cared what was happening in Paris? The best play in the world was taking place right here at Sweet Valley High. And naturally enough, she had the starring role. Jessica had a feeling she had just earned herself a standing ovation.
It's so fucking good. It's so good. She's playing us. We know she's playing us, and we are falling for it. I am on my feet, even knowing that it's an act. Brava. A triumph.
Yeah. Oh, you know what would have made this only better?
Nothing.
The only way this book would have been better is if it would have been like, oh my God, I'm gonna get chills thinking about this. Let me try to say it really quick. But do you remember did you watch Murphy Brown?
Of course.
Do you remember that episode? They were so real for this, where she cuts off her hair and the ratings go down, like what happened on Felicity season 2. I'll never forget. But this was before Felicity. So Felicity actually ripped off Murphy Brown, but whatever. There's an episode of Murphy Brown where she cuts off her hair and then the ratings go down, and it's about like sexism and how like ladies should be allowed to have short hair. And it's like this very like stressful episode of like everyone's yelling at her of like, why are you having short hair now? And like, you're so bad and ugly, like you shouldn't even have a job or whatever. And like, I don't even remember what happens. Maybe she like quits or she gets angry, I don't know what, but then she goes home and at the end of the episode, she sits on her bed and she takes off her short hair wig.
Brownie, do you honestly think I'm going to accept this as a slip of the scissors? We all know what's going on here. This was an act of defiance, pure and simple.
And one of my better ones, if I do say so. Jean, don't you think you're overreacting? The people who watch don't care if I change my hair.
When audiences were asked what quality they admired about Murphy Brown, 62% of the urban males 18 to 35 listed her trademark mane of hair at or near the top.
Candy Bergen is everything.
Truly. All right. Then Liz and Enid. And Liz is like, I'm so upset. She obviously doesn't even want to be a twin anymore. And Enid's like, I don't know. She sounds so effective, like Joan Collins on Dynasty.
I was really moved by the way that Elizabeth says it isn't just herself that's changed, it's us.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's interesting that she is actually able to talk to Enid about her own thoughts in this way. That's all.
Mm-hmm. I mean, Enid has to pull it out of her, but yes. Jessica's now wearing a black silk jumpsuit and red high-heeled boots and oversized earrings, and Elizabeth thinks it's a bit much.
I mean, we do get a moment of Ned being pro-choice, which I think is nice. You know my father, the great defender of freedom and choice. He thinks she's entitled to do anything she wants with her appearance. I like that.
You know, a stop clock is right twice a day and whatnot. Yeah. Them being, like, essentially neglectful is right twice a day, and this is one of those times.
Yeah, that is exactly, I totally agree.
So then Jeffrey and Liz bump into each other. And he's like, maybe we could go for a drive. Maybe you could take me to that wonderful canyon that you told me about that your parents used to take you and Jess when you were little. And just at the mention of Jess, Liz is triggered. Her eyes cloud over briefly. But with an effort, she pushes the thought of her sister out of her mind. I remember. And then Jeffrey goes, I can't believe what Jess is wearing. Her outfits like have been like so wild. I actually think she looks pretty good. And then he goes, I kind of like the idea of you two being so easy to tell apart, which makes her stiffen slightly. And she says, really? And he says, yeah, I think Jess looks pretty good this way. In fact, and then she runs away. And I think we're meant to understand by the end of this book that what has happened here is a little bit of a adjacent to a misunderstanding where like what Jeffrey was trying to say was I find it comforting to be able to like visually distinguish you so easily, and for that to be more of a contrast. Like I like that or something, and Jess looks good. And Liz is interpreting it as like, oh, he's so happy about this change because he's like obsessed with Jess's new look, and now he likes her.
It's a little confusing to me what Jeffrey actually means. Like it's just a strange thing to say, and he's normally such a straight shooter.
I guess the story I tell myself is like, I don't know if it's already happened that there's been a time that he thought Jess was Liz. Like maybe it happened in the last book or something.
I think
like,
it does.
I could understand if you're trying to be romantically interested in someone, that if you even sort of justifiably or reasonably, you're just getting to know them or whatever, like mistake their twin for them. I could see that could be a disturbing experience, sort of, or not necessarily disturbing, but like you really don't want to make that mistake again, and it's uncomfortable for everyone.
I can understand that.
And so I guess what I'd be hoping is that he'd be like, this is so great. Now I see you from like across the lawn, and I know I can just run to the blonde one, and like I don't have to be like, check for the mole or whatever the fuck. Check for the khakis.
Check for the weekend pants.
So I don't know.
Yeah.
Versus something creepy like, I want you to only be mine. And if there's another one of you out there, some other guy's gonna get her, but you belong to me and only me, so I better keep you both in a dungeon. Like, because those are the two options.
Yeah.
Right?
I just wondered if you had some extra insight into this, because famously all of your ex-lovers have been identical sextuplets. So I didn't know how you kind of navigated that.
Oh, they weren't sextuplets necessarily with each other.
Oh! God, language is so interesting.
Isn't it?
Yes. I've been putting this off as far as as long
journal?
and hard as I can, but
The journal,
unfortunately,
you know what? Let me be Grandma Wakefield for you. I'll get us through it really quick.
okay. Oh, God,
A bunch
it's
of
so
paper
long.
shuffling happens at the Oracle office. In that paper shuffling, Elizabeth's journal gets lost. Chapter 5.
Do you mind if we just very quickly, if I go to the bathroom?
I would never mind such thing.
I've a little bit of gastrointestinal distress. And she's back, baby.
Ooh, I'm so sorry to hear. If you feel safe telling me which ends or end
Oh, of course,
slash S.
of course. Out the tush.
Just tush?
Just
Let me
tush.
say, not
100%
just.
tush.
No, just. Of course,
No.
tush is huge. Tush
Don't
is
say of
huge.
course.
No, tush is huge. Tush is huge. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry
She's
to hear
having a hard
that.
time. Thank you for your concern. But I'm okay. I don't feel like we need to process it any further than this. It's like my tummy hurts. But
All
I'm a
right.
survivor. I'm not going to let it compromise my Christianity, okay?
I normally wouldn't say this, but I actually would love to hear you sing as much of that song as you want to sing, or just that part or whatever, please, if you feel like you want to. I would love to hear it.
I normally wouldn't say this. Normally, I wouldn't want to encourage you or make you happy or let you think that I enjoy any aspect of this. But because your
That's
tummy
not what I
hurts.
meant. That's
Oh,
not your soul. Oh my God, you hate me. You want me dead. You
No.
want me in a ditch. This is what you want from me. This is what you want.
Mm-hmm.
First, I disappear without a trace.
Ooh,
They say-
intriguing.
They say no signs of a break-in. Could be an inside job. This is what inside job Tina did it. I mean, what are we talking about here? No, it's not an inside job.
You know what, never, and for you to throw her under the bus like that is so fucked up.
That I'm saying that's the joke. It's like, of course, it wasn't an inside job because who did it? The dog. I'm not throwing her under the bus. I'm pointing out the absurdity. Then they figure out, I guess someone came and took me. I don't know, but maybe they came in the back door. Anyhow,
Winky
what
face.
happens over the days and weeks, my community, sort of my loved ones, is rallying around me. Maybe you even fly into Toronto, help put up posters missing.
course.
Where is she? I mean, you're not coming for my 40th birthday, so I guess maybe you could come after I'm dead. So then what happens? One day they find the earring. Oh, we found the earring. One day they find the cloth of a t-shirt in the woods. And in the woods, slowly they're finding clothes with blood, clothes with blood, clothes with blood. Everyone's saying, well, it's not looking great, but I guess we have to wait for the DNA. The family saying, oh no. And maybe you can make a nice candlelight vigil. I don't know what. Non-denominational. I don't want religious prayer, but some sort of 60-second moment of silence, hold up a candle. I don't know what. But what's going to actually happen is it's too late. They are going to find the body. Unfortunately, it's been decomposed and sort of maimed and brutalized to the point where it's not identifiable even by the closest loved ones. So what has to happen is they actually have to do a special skeletal analysis, but because this is Canada, there's probably no one who does it. It's like too expensive. So they have to send it to the United States. But that gets caught up in paperwork and bureaucracy because you'll never guess it. But sending a skeleton to the United States from Canada in order to do a very, very specialized high technology analysis, which, by the way, who's paying for this? Not the Pardos, okay? My parents are not paying for this. So I hope it's the Crown, the government of Canada, hopefully is going to pay for this. Probably they have to also have a full-time person accompanying it. That skeleton can't go by itself on Uber
definitely
Eats,
not.
okay? No, you got to have a custodian, a sort of steward, as it were. And they're not flying economy, honey.
No. And they're not paying for their own ticket.
They are not staying at the
La Quinta.
anyhow, 5 years becomes 10. It's not on the top of anyone's to-do list. Finally, it gets there to do the analysis, gets back. Yeah, it's her. So finally, we have some closure. And Robert says, and now I can be happy and do the podcast by myself.
Yeah. Well, I guess Elizabeth is not the only diary that's gone missing that someone else has read, because you are reading my dream journal right now.
That's rude. Okay. Chapter 5.
Shall we?
Liz is moping. Everyone loves Jessica's new look.
Jessica's trying to lose weight, which is gross, and we're not even going to talk about it.
She tells Caroline that change is the word in fashion.
She's been missing some cheerleading practices. She says to Lila, cheerleading is so childish. I'm thinking about starting ballet lessons again. Ballet is so artistic and elegant, don't you think?
Now, it says Jessica had taken ballet lessons when she was younger, but had dropped them. Now, what I think is going to be an interesting thing for us to consider in terms of historically these books and at the time sort of intertextuality is that now we see Sweet Valley Twins is getting published. And I do remember that Sweet Valley Twins, I think it's number 2, is called Teacher's Pet, and it's them being ballerinas, and they have a very, very nasty, mean, harsh, probably Eastern European ballet teacher who like is so mean to Jess. And it's all about Jess resenting Liz for being a teacher's pet because like Liz can do no wrong. But then at the end, it turns out Jess is the one with the talent, and the teacher was only mean on her because of all her actual potential, and abuse is actually love. So it is interesting for us to see, like, are we going to be getting a lot more references to that time that then actually connects those actual stories? It'll be interesting to see how that sort of tapestry grows.
It's nice because it gives me something to talk about with my kid's sister and my kid's sister's friends and my friends' kid sisters.
And so on, and so on, and so on. I do just want to note that, like, you know, so we get Jessica's perspective. Elizabeth had complained, staring balefully. She's been moping at Jessica, is how Jessica's perceiving it. And then Jessica had ignored her, and she's thinking to herself, Elizabeth doesn't understand anything. Elizabeth acted as if she, Jessica, had committed treason, which we know the word betrayal, as you pointed out, is how Elizabeth feels, is that it is treason, right? Just because she wanted a little individuality. Elizabeth kept moping, giving Jessica pained looks whenever she saw her, which is funny. So Jessica's solution is basically just avoid her.
We get several more affectations. We've got Jessica drinking disgusting coffee that she hates, and she's saying it's delicious, and Lila's saying that stuff looks like sludge. And then Jessica has the response heard around the world. The trouble with you, Lila, is that you just don't understand elegance. She's amazing. She's everything to me. Again,
like this semiotically, it makes a lot of sense. So what is the lifestyle brand? The lifestyle brand is this European, quote unquote, elegance, which involves these different indexicals. And what does this prove? That sign objects are meaningless until they come within a sort of semiotic regime that assigns them meaning. And what's an example of this? Cheerleading is juvenile. Ballet is better, right? Now, we thought Jessica was over calling things juvenile. Like the previous identity that called cheerleading and sorority stuff juvenile and tried to do film and art and stuff, that was when she was with the American college kids and trying to live up to them. Or when she did some of those indexicals to try to live up to the Bruce Patman. But each of those is a different lifestyle brand. One is like American middle class, white, of course, kind of basic college kids, right? The other is old money wasps. But so what this shows is that signs in isolation don't have meaning. They are imbued with meaning when they are combined in a constellation of signs that is going to conjure, successfully or unsuccessfully, depending on how it lands, some sort of aggregate effect, also known as lifestyle. Because, for example, we could remember Amy, right? One of Amy's signs of being pretentious when she showed up was drinking black coffee when they went to the pancake house, right? And wanting to lose weight. But that's her being like a East Coast Jessica understands this. She understands that it's about sort of recontextualizing and recombining with other things.
Importantly, she is wearing a white slim cut skirt that was several inches longer than what she usually wore, with a white sweater with sequins on it, and a white beret completed the look.
That one I had to really sit with and just to picture it, to hold the picture in my head together.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it's just you really, to me, it's work to try to imagine it because it's just so out there. It's like a white slim cut skirt that's long, a little bit longer, fine. So it's like the white sweater with sequins. So I'm picturing the white sweater with sequins. I'm picturing so sort of like, I'm picturing like mohair. Like I'm just picturing like very like a lot, like mohair with sequins or something. And then a white beret, and then the stark dark hair. It's like, wow. Well, she knows what she's doing, as we always say. And then everyone's like, holy shit. And she goes, thanks. I just picked this little thing up at Lizette's. Isn't it sweet?
It is.
And what does that show? Right? That shows she has the competency to do it on her own, because I think it's important that the first day she showed up to homeroom, it said everything she was wearing was Lila's, because then we could accuse her of, well, are you really making your own identity? Now you're just cribbing Lila's. You're head to toe Lila's stuff from Paris. So I guess you're just Lila now, or what Lila's dad thinks is cool. You know, so now she's showing, well, guess what? Even just with our local Lizette's at the mall, I can actually still keep this up.
I love your point that it's actually not even Lila who picked it out. It's Lila's dad who brought the clothes. It's like
Lila's dad's assistant.
Sure. Okay, so I guess I was thinking like, this is like a 45-year-old white man's version of fashion, but it's actually not. It's his 22-year-old lover / secretary's idea of fashion. And I love that for us.
Boopity boop.
Beepity beep. Dee Dee plans the idea of Jessica being a model. It worked for Regina. It could work for her. We've got Jessica trying to go to the photographer. Of course, it's not Jessica going to the photographer anymore. It's Jessa Fields. That's where we get her first use of the fake name, or her new name, or whatever. She talks to Mr. Avery. He's says, like,
yeah, you might do okay. You might do just fine, or something gross. And you're like, trafficking.
Then there's a red flag of like, well, we need to take the photographs first. It'll be $125 for the photographs.
The guy tells her, like, yeah, you might do. Actually, my client, which is this department store, Lynette and Brown or something, they are having a fashion show and they're looking for, I don't know, teenagers or whatever.
They want a new look for someone to model the clothes.
Yeah. So she's getting she's going to get the photos that it's going to cost $150 in order to share with this person to see if she could get the gig. Liz and Enid?
I guess. Yeah, Liz is lizzing out about the lost journal, but no one cares. Enid, I'm done for if anybody finds that notebook. That's all there is to it. It's like, no, honey, we're all focused on what new look Jessica's going to turn, or Jessa is going to turn. No one cares about you.
Well, Robert, I'm going to tell you something. You may recall side editions of Sweet Valley High called Jessica's Secret Diary and Elizabeth's Secret Diary. And so those are actual books that we are going to read. We're actually going to read her diary in the future.
Dreading it.
And well, what I'm going to say is, Robert, the fact of her being so, oh no, where is it? You know, we've seen a few examples of what she said. Nothing too scandalous there. I'm sad about Sister's makeover, and does my boyfriend like me as much as I like him? You know, nothing too groundbreaking, but we have not been exposed to all the entries, and we would be fools to assume that we know all the contents of Elizabeth's diaries, volume 1, 2, and 3.
Wow. Do you think this was a ploy to get us, like, to gin up interest for her diaries so that when they, no, because there's so many missing diary books?
I don't know. All right, blah, blah, blah. The parents are like, okay, we'll loan you the money for the photos. You pay us back. She says, okay. Then we get the Ramsbury Fair. Big talk about this Ramsbury Fair, okay? What is Ramsbury Fair? Ramsbury Fair is something very nostalgic for the Wakefields, and it comes up because they're looking through old movies because they're going to make a super cut to send to the grandparents. Let's just, that is what that is. So this brings up the subject of Ramsbury Fair, something we love to do. We're little kids. It's a big fair 10 miles from Sweet Valley, and everyone pitches in to make the fair special. We didn't get more information on how people are pitching in and what does this consist of, but there's hay rides, amusement park, dozens of games, square dancing. Why did they talk about food? Like, I want to see candied apples. I want to see hot cider. Like, this is very fall vibes. If you're going to do a hayride, you're telling me it's fall, which we can't get into that. But where's the like fall snacks? Like pumpkin pie? Like what? Whatever. And Jessica's like, well, this doesn't fit in with my new brand identity of Jessica Field. So, like, count me out this year. And Liz is like, what? So sad. And then chapter ends, Elizabeth thinking, why did it seem that she and Jessica had lost something precious, something they were in danger of never being able to recover? Yeah. I get it. I get it. Because so much of her identity too is like, she's part of this twosome, like for good or for bad, that is what it is. And like, I could see it's like so destabilizing. It's like your sister.
Mm-hmm. Liz and Jeffrey's like, are you avoiding me? And they have this another misunderstanding. Basically, Liz is just Lizzing out of control.
Yes.
And it's very hard to do.
Lizzing. He's like, so we're all set for the fair, right? I'm so excited. You've been always telling me about it. She's like, well, Jessica thinks she's too grown up for it, so I don't know. And then Jeffrey's mouth tightens and he's like annoyed. And he's like, fine, well then, I guess I don't really want to go anyway. And she goes, you just changed your mind because of Jessica. You were willing to go until I told you what she said. And he's like, what? And then he freaks out so understandably and he goes, yeah, okay, I guess if Jessica can't go, then why should we go? Why should everything be based on Jessica? And she's like, I'm beginning to get the picture. It's just so annoying. And he like tries to talk, she keeps interrupting him. She's just like, God knows what.
He was trying to be sarcastic. She is too busy lizzing that she can't possibly pick up on sarcasm or read the nuance of subtext.
So what she's telling herself is that like he's annoyed, that the reason he's so visibly frustrated and like upset isn't because she's acting cuckoo. It's because Jessica changed her mind about going to Raspberry Fair. Like that's meant, I mean, we always talk about gymnastics, but this is like you're jumping from, I don't know, somewhere very far to somewhere very far because like, even if, like it's what? So Jeffrey's hot for Jessica. And so he was so excited about being with her at this fucking fair that when she was going, he would then decide that he can't go with his fake girlfriend Elizabeth, who he's just fake dating till he can get to Jess. So he's gonna like what? What?
I think she's just projecting. She actually is not going because Jess isn't going, so she's projecting that onto Jeffrey.
Which she famously loves to do. Oh my God, Liz. Oh, it's so funny because it's like Housewives. Like you go through waves with these people. Like, you know, when I was a kid, I loved so much the Liz and I so identified with the Jess. And then now I'm always loving Jess and I'm supporting her and advocating for her. And of course, I continue to do so. But now in book 32, my irritation for Liz has, I think, let go towards now more. I have a little bit more compassion for her because I see that like I've gone through dealing with her outrageous and like no one ever calls her on it behavior. And now I just feel bad for her that like, wow, she lives in this trap. She lives in this prison of her own mind where she has to like mentally basically torture herself all day long. And just like, she lives in a constant state of anxiety, dissociation. Sorry.
It's hard. No, you never apologize for kind of making your meaning and finding your compassion for this woman who's really going through it.
Never apologize for making your meaning. That's beautiful, Robert. That should be on a pillow.
Yeah. I got it at Home Goods. It is. It's actually on all of my pillows.
That's so fun. Okay. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. Jess asks Liz, what's wrong? You look so sad. Liz, can you see how much better this is for both of us? I mean it, Jess said earnestly. I read this whole study in a magazine recently. Supposedly twins have an identity crisis. And it's important to have distinguishing characteristics. And Liz is like, but we always look different. We wore different clothes and everyone who mattered could tell us apart. And Jess is like, well, then why did Jeffrey mistake me for you? Liz is like, did that have something to do with this? And Jess is like, well, you can see how it would be disturbing, can't you? I used to think the same way you do, but when my twin's own boyfriend mistakes me for her, that's sort of what we were talking about before, right? Of like why Jeffrey also prefers them to look separate. And Liz is like, wow, this is ironic. It's ironic that you dyeing your hair had something to do with Jeffrey mixing us up when he's actually so happy with how it turned out.
Very gift of the Magi here. Astute observation, Liz.
So whatever. Again, Liz is sort of taking all, as Robert would say, dada, and sort of skewing it towards this narrative that she's decided that Jeffrey likes Jess now. And she's like, well, I guess he likes you now. And Jessica's like, really? Jessica basically starts to consider, maybe I should get to know Jeffrey if actually that's the case, and they're done. Jessica's like, Jeffrey, let's have lunch together. We should get to know each other better. He's like, okay. And then she basically is trying to flirt with him, and then realizes he actually loves Liz, because he's like, what's going on with Liz? Like, I miss her. Of course I am loving Liz. And Jessica's like, oh. So Liz, for some reason, has to like be with Jess when she goes to meet this like shopping mall client. Jessica comes out of the room with them crying because the shopping mall client said, like, you are not the look we want. We actually want like a blonde California Pacific-eyed, blue-eyed girl. And actually, that is you, pointing at Elizabeth, who's been in the waiting room minding her own business because she would never be interested in such things.
No.
The department store guy's like, okay, we want actually Elizabeth, the blonde one, because she fits like what we're looking for this fashion show coming up. Jessica's like, boo-hoo. Elizabeth's like, I obviously am not interested in modeling, but I guess I'll think about it. And then, I guess after getting the diary back and then being nice to Liz after the home videos and saying, okay, let's go to Ramsbury Fair, she basically is like, makes up with Liz because she like reads the journal and sees that Liz is sad after Penny drops it off. And then is like, they want you to do the modeling. So she's like, what she's gonna do is like wash out the black from her hair, show up, be like, hi, it's me, Elizabeth, do the modeling gig. And everyone's like, okay, that makes sense. Even though it's like, she should have just showed up, told the truth of I'm Jessica. They have no commitment to the biographical figure of Jess or Liz, but whatever.
In some ways, it's like almost sweet
Yes.
that she thinks like, oh, I'm not just a body to these people. Like they care about the person. And so I have to be Liz. When it's like, oh, sweetheart, you're just a meat rack that they're going to hang clothing on. They don't care.
Right. That's her like enacting. Like if only anyone cared who was Jess and who was Liz. That's so sad.
It is really, really sad.
That's dark. Okay, so she goes through this whole rigmarole of hi, I'm Liz. And then it's like, Liz, this is crazy, gets a black wig to show up to support Jessica at the department store modeling gig. The rationale behind the black wig being like, well, those department store guys saw that there was one blonde hair girl, one black hair girl. So if Jessica, with now her washed out blonde hair, is pretending to be me, the famously only one with blonde hair, then I guess I'm actually the one with black hair, might have to wear a wig. Okay.
Sure.
So,
fine.
So that would be the thing that would be happening. Fine. But then when she shows up to the department store thing, department store guy, like, what, pulls off her wig, or her wig falls off or something. And he's like, oh, you actually are also having blonde hair? And she's like,
yes.
And she's like, yeah. And he's like, well, why don't you go be in the modeling show too? Like, it's great to have twins. Everyone loves twins. And she's like, okay. And then they model together and have this moment of, if we could consider them oscillating between these extremes of extreme differentiation, extreme being the sameness. It's sort of, this is, they've watched the home videos of the Ramsbury Fair and they've had a nostalgia for when they were more being, leaning into being alike. And now them being in this modeling show where they're celebrating their identicalness, but also posing as each other, highlighting their non-differentiatedness, is, I think, supposed to feel for us like a comfortable settling back in, a comfortable, okay, well, we now have an appreciation for this again. Again, ideologically rendering Jessica's extremely rational attempts at resistance and departure, just as we saw in Runaway, as aberrant, liminal, temporary deviance that must be then reincorporated back into the normative order, whether that's the family order or the whatever of like the social role of them being identical twins, So she got to have her little rebellion, and now she gets interpolated back as the identical twin that she supposedly resisted. And then the book ends with the parents still referring to them as girls. Chapter 9. Sorry. Makes me mad. Fuck you. Didn't you learn a lesson?
No. Let me be very clear. This is all the narrative of the book is like, wow, Jess was wrong for trying to differentiate herself. She really should just happily be one of the girls. Look, it even works for fashion shows. You should just be happy. No lessons learned.
Then Liz finally talks to Jeffrey and is like, he at the beginning is icy, and she tells him what she thought, and he gruffly says, "Stupid girl, how could you think this? I am only loving you."
I did hate that stupid girl. But the story I told myself was he was just singing that garbage song to himself. Stupid girl. Wow, wow. Stupid girl. And it was like totally unrelated to his conversation.
So he actually anticipated that song.
Yeah, of course. He's a feminist icon, this Jeffrey French.
Boopity boop. Jess is back to blonde. We're all happy, happy, happy. And then we get the introduction of the new thing we're going to care about next time.
Which, spoiler alert, we're not going to care about.
Well, let me tell you something, Robert. With all of the secondary character books, you say you don't care.
And then I do care.
Sometimes you do.
That's true. So we've got Sally Larson, who is Dana Larson's cousin, and she is coming to live with them. Her dad had a drinking problem, left the family. Sally's mom remarried. Sally's been in a string of foster families that have not worked out.
Dana refers to her as a problem cousin. She's like, "Hey, Liz, do you have any advice on problem cousins? I know you had some annoying brat here recently. Well, I have a problem cousin too." And Liz is like, "Tell me more."
Well, I guess that's everything, Sally Larson said ruefully, looking around the tiny bedroom she'd been sharing with her foster sister. She couldn't pretend she was sad about leaving this house. At some of the homes she had lived in, it had been hard saying goodbye, but not this time. She just wished she knew her cousins and her aunt and uncle a little better. It was hard enough leaving a difficult foster family situation, but Sally knew this was the end of the road. If the Larsons didn't want her, ... But she couldn't think that way, she reminded herself. She had to be positive. This was the day she'd been looking forward to for so long. The day she'd been preparing and planning for. It was finally here. She was moving in with the family. A real family. She had to think positively, because she knew if this move didn't work out, there was no place else for her to go. Will Sally find a real home in Sweet Valley? Find out in Sweet Valley High number 33. Starting over. My hope, not that you asked, is that this turns into a single white female thing where Sally tries to fit in, and in trying to fit in, she takes over Dana Larson's life. And the tagline is something like, "Can Elizabeth navigate the fact that Sally is trying to steal Dana's life?"
That's funny. No comment, but all I'm going to say is that someone trying to take the other person's identity and their life is not a storyline in one or more books in this series.
That makes sense. If you love this episode, feel free to share it with your kid sister, your kid sister's friends, and your friends' kid sisters.
And so on, and so on, and so on.
But in all seriousness, please do share this episode.
But please rate, okay? It's one tap, okay?
Just
Period.
one tap. Sweet Valley High.
Thanks for listening to Sweet Valley Hive, hosted by Robert Marks and Rebecca Pardo. For more, check out our Instagram at Sweet Valley Hive. Theme song by Yessie and artwork by Elliot Carroll.